You mentioned something interesting before that I want to go back to. You said that you had severe social anxiety. When I was a kid, I was told it was called a stammer. I don't know how that really differs from a stutter. I don't know if it's maybe slightly different from a stutter, but apparently I had a stammer, which is similar to a stutter, or maybe it's just a stutter. I don't know. And I'm also, people don't know this about me. Well, maybe they do if they've been listening to me for a long time, but I'm actually extremely introverted. Like, I, I'd rather be at home by myself, reading something, watching something, than at a party 100% of the time. Because
Yeah.
when I'm at a party, I feel like it's a drain and it's a burden, and I need time away after I'm with people for an extended period of time.
hmm
Um, so talk a little bit about your severe social anxiety. Where do you think it came from? How did you get over it? And I mean, it really is interesting that you're in this field given that reality.
Yeah. Man, where it came from. I mean, it's one of these things where I think as you're growing up, you sort of just absorb your environment. My parents both have, they were never as anxious as I am, but they have, moments like that. And I think I definitely absorbed a lot of that, growing up. And I don't know. I was first described as a shy kid, but it got to the point, I was like 17 years old, and I remember this distinctively because I wanted to rent a video game at Blockbuster back when they existed, and I was I was so socially anxious. I was too nervous about the social interaction at the counter with the person, giving me the game. So I didn't go because of that. So when it got to that point, I'm like, okay, I need help. So that's when I actually went to seek professional help through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and I did that for a month or two. But even that got to a point where like now they want to begin challenging you in real life, and I wasn't ready yet. So I was like, all right, I'm out. Not happening. I just wasn't ready to really change it. It wasn't really until I moved away. I forced myself to go to a college that was hours away. I had to move out of my house, and that's what really helped to open me up. And then eventually, years later, I did ayahuasca in Peru, and actually I learned a lot about that through the Joe Rogan podcast. Funny enough, but so I did that, and that also helped to alleviate a lot of especially my depression at the time. That completely evaporated, but also helped to cut my anxiety. Even though I still have it from time to time, I know how to manage it in a way that I didn't before. So that helped. Magic mushrooms also helped me as well. So there are these psychedelics that I think should be decriminalized, should be used at least by professionals as a tool in their toolbox to prescribe to people, maybe in a professional setting, in a controlled setting, but do it in a way that helps people and isn't forcing them to be on a pill for the rest of their lives. Because a lot of these issues, be it depression, anxiety, you can manage them or eliminate them, I should say, with proper use of psychedelics. And again, it's important, I think, to be in a controlled setting for that kind of thing. But it's the kind of thing where we have the science, we have the data, we have mountains of people and their experiences with this stuff. This is something that we really need to continue looking at in terms of decriminalizing and legalizing. And actually, Detroit, I just saw recently, they decriminalized all psychedelics. So, certain cities are doing the right thing and are moving in the right direction. But it's going to take, I think, more of a societal awareness of just the impact and importance that psychedelics can have on people's lives for there to really be a dramatic shift in how the healthcare industry looks at this issue. And of course, that gets to big pharma, and they don't want that done because they can't really patent, nature. So that gets into their profits. But if we have an honest discussion about how can we actually help people and improve society by cutting anxiety and depression, psychedelics is, I think, the number one way to do that.
You said so many interesting things there that I want to respond to, because this is like, in some ways, it's actually a big personal difference between us. So you used ayahuasca and you used magic mushrooms. How many times did you use them? Let me start with that.
So ayahuasca, it was like a week-long thing. I saved up like a ton of money to go. It was the whole like experience. Like you're with a shaman. There's a group of people that you're with, and it was so. I think we did it 3 or 4 times that week. And so yeah, it was like a whole week experience. Magic mushrooms I've used a few times. Once for actual like health benefits. It was actually while I was running as a Green Party candidate. It was before my first debate. I was like a wreck. Like I'm like, there's no way.
Why would you take it before your debate?
No, sorry. It wasn't right before the debate.
Oh, okay.
It was like it was like 2 weeks before, because I wanted to like just
Oh, okay.
clear my head
Right.
of all this worry, this fear. So I took it, and it helped. Honestly, it helped me a lot to be able to get through that whole process. And then I used it a few more times after, but that was like the most, in terms of using it, that was the actual health benefit aspect of when I used that first time.
So what did it lift your anxiety and depression? Did it happen immediately? Was it like a slow process, but it lifted? Explain how that felt.
So when you're actually on mushrooms, it's like a 6-hour experience. So it can be hell for some people. I mean, especially if you want to do actual work. Like it's a mixture of extremely hard laughter and crying and tears. Like and at times you're both so happy and so sad at the same time. It's very hard to explain, but it's, if you go into it with a certain intention. So I went into that experience with the intention. I was alone at the time doing this. And actually, I should say you should probably have someone around you who's sober during this process. But I was aware enough. I had my ayahuasca experience already, like years before, so I was more aware of how this whole thing would go. So I took it with the intention of wanting to just, ease my anxiety, get more of a recentering back to, Mother Nature, back to Earth, and kind of remove myself from all of the outside pressures. And that's what it does. Like it is almost an instant thing. After those 6 hours, I mean, you feel when you're coming out of it, you feel, as I felt, amazing, like just completely amazing. You feel like all this weight's off your shoulders. You have a clearer head. It gives you a perspective that this isn't like the most important thing in the world. You know what I mean? And I think that helps to give you awareness and context for your own life when it relieves that kind of pressure from you, making you understand that you're still a tiny dot in this massive universe. That really helps to allow you to sort of be yourself in a way that maybe we can't when we're so stuck under these pressures and this stress.
So bear with my potentially dumb question here, but is that potentially because the experience was so earth-shattering and intense and powerful and negative that just being back to reality almost in comparison feels amazing? Or is it because it actually does something, you think, in your brain, whatever it might be, chemical wise, that really sort of resets you?
So just based on the actual science and studies, the understanding is that there is an actual chemical change that it can have on you. Now, even if that wasn't the case, I don't really care what the mechanism is. I care about the outcome. So the impact on me was that I was happy. I felt different. I felt like this weight was off my shoulders. So even if it just was because it was this incredible experience that was so intense, then fine. Like if that's the reason,
Right.
then cool. But my understanding, and I'm not an expert in this field, just to be clear, but my understanding is that it does have an actual impact, and a long-lasting impact. I mean, this is the difference between taking a pill versus taking a psychedelic. Psychedelics have a real long-term impact. Be it most people say usually 6 months to 18 months is how long they feel that experience. Some people it's their entire lives have completely changed and
Wow.
they never need it again. But someone like me, my anxiety is so intense. I do need, a new experience every now and then, just to kind of remind myself of, that I'm this individual, not this, stress-filled, anxiety-ridden person. But yeah, I think it changes depending on the person.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, I've always talked about how I feel perfectly comfortable taking a substance that's either going to bring my mood up and make me feel energetic and focused and adrenaline, or bringing my mood down and making me feel tranquil and relaxed and at ease and all that stuff. And so, my experience with substances is more in that realm. In fact, I've never really done I guess weed is mildly psychedelic, and it certainly is for me. I feel like I'm extra sensitive to weed for whatever reason. So I've had touches of it in that respect, but I've never done magic mushrooms, never done ayahuasca, never done LSD, never done any of that stuff. My drug experience is more with the pills and the uppers and the downers and things of that nature. And I always personally felt like I'm actually terrified of psychedelics because based off what I've heard everybody talk about, they across the board they say it's a super powerful experience, and that alone is kind of scary to me. But most people say yes, positive effects like you're describing. Handful say it was terrible. I never want to do it again. I don't remember what the substance was where I was told that. But what would you say to somebody like me, who's, I guess you could say, a touch of a skeptic, that they're, for me, because again, I enjoy the experience of, I want to go up, or I want to go down, or I want to relax, or I want to focus, but I've never really dabbled in the, let me totally change my outlook, my perspective, and all that stuff, because I almost feel like life is this delicate balance, especially when it comes to, your inner dialogue and your mood. And I almost don't want to do anything to totally jeopardize that, because I don't feel like I want to. Like I'm relatively comfy and stable with the current feels, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The first thing I would say is that it's definitely not for everyone. And if you don't feel like you need it, then don't do it. Like, I would never force anyone into experience. I would never say, oh, you should try it anyways. If you don't feel like you need it, then I don't think you should take it. That said, it's all about intention and setting. So I would never suggest anyone do psychedelics if you're going to be in public. Like, don't. That would be crazy. But if you're if you're with a friend in your home and no one's coming over, it's just going to be you two or like three of you, and you just have that experience. It can be a very moving experience, and especially you have to be somewhere where you're comfortable, where you're around people that you're comfortable with. The people that have bad experiences, bad trips, it's almost always connected to alcohol and being in public or being at a party. I mean, if I would never say, like, don't mix. I wouldn't say mix, drinking with psychedelics, because that you're just looking for. I mean, some people can have a good time on that, but I wouldn't suggest it. It's not the whole point. It's not the point of having psychedelics. So usually people that have bad experience, it's because they mixed it with something else, or because they're in a public setting that they, freak them out in some way. But if you are with one other person or two other people, and you're comfortable with those people, and you can be yourself, and you have your experience, it can be very moving. And especially if you're with people and you go for maybe a walk, not in public, but like in nature, in a forest somewhere. Understanding as well, you're somewhere where you are familiar with the terrain. You're not going to get lost in the forest, but you have that experience with nature. It's hard to describe unless you've had that experience. And I know that's kind of a cop-out answer to say, but it's a very, you're experiencing life at a very different level. Like you look at people almost as aliens. Like I know this very, vividly. But when I had one experience, I was just thinking about we're so weird. Like, I'm looking at my hands, and this is just so odd. Like, I'm looking at myself as I'm looking down at my human body, sort of as like a disembodied, thought, or a soul, for lack of a better term, looking at just how weird people are and society is. It just gives you a very different perspective, and I think it opens your mind up to and sometimes this is not intentional, but it just opens your mind up to looking at things differently, especially if you feel stuck in your life, or stuck in a certain way of thinking, and you don't know how to get out of that. Sometimes just a light experience can help you. And again, it can change depending on how much you take. Like, if you take, like, I don't know, 3 grams of shrooms, you're going to have a crazy experience. But you can microdose or take a gram, and it's a very different experience. And again, do it where it's decriminalized, where it's not illegal. I'm not, condoning illegal use of substances here. I'm just saying, if you have that experience, you can kind of change what experience you want to have depending on how much you take. Now, when it comes to ayahuasca, I think it's a very different thing. Yeah. That it's a whole different topic, that is. But when it comes to decriminalized substances like psilocybin, you can change your experience depending on how much you take.
So, to change gears here a little bit, would you describe yourself as a socialist or a social democrat, or how would you describe yourself?